at WIBW's Forum, featuring the Democratic candidates in the state's 2nd Congressional District, moderated by Melissa Bruner.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for our special Decision 2024 coverage. The Democrats vying for the Kansas 2nd Congressional District seat address the issues important to you. This is an open race. Incumbent Jake LaTurner is not seeking re-election, so we're helping you get to know those who want to take his place. Last week, you heard from all 5 of the Republicans vying for their party's nomination. Today, we are pleased to have the 2 Democrats that you will see on the August 6th ballot, Nancy Boyda and Matt Kleinmann. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate that. Here's how we will move through our forum this afternoon. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement, and we'll reserve time for each to give a 1-minute closing statement. We will limit answers to questions to 1 minute each, and we're using alphabetical order to determine the order, so we will alternate who goes first and second, and that brings us to our opening statements this afternoon. We begin with Nancy Boyda.
Thank you, Melissa, and so good to be back. I am Nancy Boyda, and I'm the Congresswoman who beat Jim Ryan in 2006, that track star that nobody thought would ever be beat. Well, I beat him by 4 points. And everybody wants to know, how did I do that? Well, I did it because I was and have been and am today a moderate, independent, strong woman who Kansans will vote for, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a moderate. I'm the woman that people will vote for and trust. So I'm in the race because I am deeply concerned about our country. And I believe that Matt is a great guy, but I believe that I'm the only one who has won this race in 30 years. And I firmly believe that I'm the only one who can bring this home in November.
Nancy Boyda, thank you. Matt Kleinmann.
First off, good evening, and thank you for paying attention to our democracy. This is a really critical election. I just want to express how important it is that our country shows up and votes this August and into November. My name is Matt Kleinmann, and while I'm sitting down, you might recognize me as the tall redhead from the 2008 Men's National Championship team at KU. And for the last 10 years, I've been working with working families, making sure that we have access to affordable housing, improving access to health care and mental health, and making sure that we can get food, safe sidewalks, and safe parks in our communities. And along the way, I have recognized that we don't have the federal investment that we need. We need a champion in Congress who's going to fight for everyday working Kansans. This is the most important election of my lifetime, and I'm looking forward to the future of Kansas. We also have to make sure that we protect our rights, whether it's voting rights, civil rights, or reproductive freedoms. This is a critical election, so I would encourage you, tell your friends, tell your family, get out and vote. Our democracy depends on it, and I look forward to having your support on August 6th. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. We begin the questions this afternoon with your thoughts on what has been unfolding over the past several days, with President Joe Biden ending his re-election campaign 4 weeks ahead of the Democratic National Convention. The question is, who do you support to take his place at the top of the Democratic ticket, and how does this situation reflect on our political system? The question goes first to Matt Kleinmann.
Well, thank you for the question. I know that this is a very important election because of what Project 2025 represents to our country. It is a destruction of our American democracy, and I certainly supported President Biden to make the decision that was best for him and his campaign. Their administration has done a wonderful job taking us out of economic recession and avoiding some of the worst impacts of COVID and in the aftermath. But I was proud to endorse Kamala Harris for president yesterday and standing with our DNC delegates from the Kansas Democratic Party. I know that President Harris is building momentum, and there's a ton of enthusiasm for her candidacy. This is going to be an awesome DNC convention. We already see enough delegates are supporting her campaign, and I am so grateful to President Biden for the leadership he showed in stepping back and allowing the next generation of leaders to take his place. So I support Kamala Harris, and I am looking forward to seeing her win in November.
Matt, thank you. Nancy.
Matt, I couldn't agree with you more. I did take a bold move. And the morning after the debate, I put out a press release, and it began with the words, "with a heart full of compassion." And it did call on President Biden to step aside and to make room in this absolutely critical election that we're facing, to make room for a younger generation. I took some flack from my party for that. But that has been who I have been. I will always stand up. If it means breaking with my party, I will do that. And I said that I would, in fact, do it again. When he stepped down yesterday, the paper called and got a quote, and I said, no, this isn't a joyous day. This is the day that we honor and we mourn that President Biden, in fact, is stepping down. But I am so proud to watch Democrats nationally just coalesce. Not a lot of drama. We're not doing a bunch of drama. We're coming around with Kamala Harris, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get her elected. I am so proud of Democrats.
Appreciate that. Nationally, we did have the assassination attempt on former President Trump. We've had several school shootings over the years. Topeka last year set a record for the number of homicides in a single year, most involving firearms. So our next question goes to the heart of raising the question as to how people may access guns in our country. What changes, if any, should be made to gun laws? And if none, how would you address the issue of gun violence? Nancy Boyda, your answer first.
Well, let's start first with this tragic fact that the number one reason that we lose our children to death, it's guns. And I hate to even give that out as a fact because it's not just a factoid, these are our children. And the number one cause of death is guns. Derek Schmidt has an A+ rating with the NRA. And I believe that that is just a radical position that is contrary to what 75% of Kansans believe. So after the tragedy at Uvalde, Republicans in Congress, really the Republicans and Democrats got together and they came up with a common sense piece of legislation that 75% of Kansans agree to. Derek Schmidt, his AA rating with the NRA, that's more important to him than the safety of our children.
And time, we'll leave it at that. Matt.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race that Moms Demand Action considers as a gun sense candidate. This is an issue, though, that we have bipartisan support if we really sit down and listen to our neighbors. I know that everybody on the Democrat and Republican side believes in the Second Amendment right to own and bear firearms. However, it's not right that only one industry in our entire country, the gun industry, is immune from lawsuits and prosecution. There is a law on the books called the PLCAA, and I would vote to repeal that law because I think it's only fair that the gun industry includes safety mechanisms in their products that they sell. The other piece of this issue is that we need to make sure that we close the gun show loopholes. I live in a community that experiences gun violence, and I know what it's like to hear gunshots at night. I don't think that it's right that gangs, cartels, and domestic terrorists are allowed to buy guns illegally. If we have universal background checks, that will make all of us, including our children, safer.
Matt, thank you very much. Our next question gets your thoughts on LGBTQ+ issues. Several cases are making their way through the courts right now regarding Title IX and whether those protections should extend to transgender students. Do you believe they should? Matt Kleinmann, you answer first, please.
I certainly believe that LGBTQ rights are human rights. Full stop. I'm proud to be supported by the LGBTQ caucus of the Kansas Democratic Party on these issues. And I think it's important that we recognize that only one party is pushing for a far-right extreme agenda to take people's rights away. And I firmly believe that the right to care, health care, no matter who you are, is between you and your doctor. And I believe that we need to make sure that we let local leaders on the ground decide what's best for their communities. But I also believe, as a principle, as a Christian, that those who are closest to the problem should be closest to the solution. That means we must elevate the voices of our LGBTQ youth, especially those who are under the crosshairs from far-right politicians, and not marginalize or punch down on any community.
Matt, thank you. Nancy.
Yes, well, I will tell you that I was very disappointed when people came to me and during Pride Month told me that Matt was calling me anti-gay. He's a little bit young, but in 2006, I took a position on gay marriage that could have cost me the election. But I took it with courage and conviction because I knew that it was the right thing to do. When it comes to trans girls, specifically in sports, I will say that I agree with you that the federal government needs to be out of our bedrooms. Make my own reproductive decisions is so important to me. And I believe that the federal government has to stop telling people and parents how to provide medical care for their children. When it comes to trans girls in sports, it's no longer this personal, private decision anymore, and in fact, it becomes an issue of fairness. And the NAIA, everything changed. Let me say, everything changed in April of 2022. If you're not familiar with Leah Thomas,
And
everything changed in April of 2022.
thank you. We're going to talk next about energy and climate change. How do you propose addressing climate change and environmental protections while balancing the needs of farmers and ranchers and considering limitations states like Kansas may have, such as lacking recharging infrastructure for electric vehicles? This question goes first to you, Nancy.
Well, certainly, I find it just almost laughable that we're still talking about if climate change is real, as if, you know, this summer, as if the last several summers isn't telling us, in fact, that this is real. Our farmers and ranchers know that climate change is real and that it is man-made. So I am so grateful for all of the investments that we have made and all of the technologies that bring us this energy, so that today we are, the United States is in fact a net energy exporter. And I believe that all of those technologies have brought us jobs, have brought economic security for a lot of our communities. All of the benefits that have come from these new technologies need to be continued. And in fact, we need to be looking for new technologies to stay at the very forefront of what's going on in the world with these technologies.
Nancy, thank you. Matt.
I first want to acknowledge Nancy's comment. It's simply not true, and I'll just leave it there. It's not true. However, I will talk about this issue, and I'm proud to talk about climate change because I serve on the board of the Climate and Energy Project, a nonprofit that advocates for renewable energies across our state. I know that farmers need to be diversifying their revenue, and we see wind farms and solar farms going up across our state. This is an energy breadbasket for the country, and if we're going to renew our small towns in America, we need to have good paying jobs. Making sure that we have the infrastructure to reduce our carbon emissions is one of the critical things we can do across the 2nd District. We have a real opportunity, but we need to have a congressman who actually knows what he's talking about and champion working families so we can reduce our utility bills. I live in Kansas City, Kansas. There is a huge utility rate increase every year, and we need to get a handle on that. And the way we do it is by providing cleaner energy at a lower cost so working families can get back to taking care of their families and not having to worry about how they're going to pay their next utility bill.
Matt, thank you, and thank you both for your answers so far. We are midway through our forum, and there is a lot more to get to. Our discussion with the Kansas 2nd District congressional Democratic candidates continues in 90 seconds.
Forum featuring the Democratic candidates in the state's 2nd Congressional District. And now, here's Melissa Bruner.
Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion with the Democratic candidates in the state's 2nd Congressional District by looking at the economy. We've been talking about inflation, and while the rate of inflation has slowed some, the cost for many items certainly remains much more expensive compared to 5 years ago. So what, if anything, should the federal government do to rein in inflation and keep down the cost of living? We begin this question with Matt Kleinmann.
Thank you. I want to make sure that families know across our district that we know the cost of living is too high. I experience it myself, and I know what it's like to struggle. I think the working families I've worked with feel it even more than I have. I think this is a critical issue to get us under control, and this is something where we need to be talking about affordable housing. We need to talk about lowering the cost of groceries, and this is a policy that I think only one party is serious about working on. The Biden-Harris administration has pulled us back from a recession, potentially, which other countries experienced. And it's also an opportunity for us to look really about our revenue. Where are we getting our revenue as a country? Our corporate tax rate dropped from 35% in 2016 to 2017. It dropped to 21% because of the Trump tax cuts. And if you look at Project 2025, they're trying to drop it down to 18%. I don't think it's right that the elites and wealthy in our country are balancing our deficit on the backs of middle-class families. And I can tell you this, as your congressman, I will fight to give the middle class and the working class a raise. We haven't had a federal minimum wage rate increase in 14 years. That is unconscionable, and I will fight.
Matt, thank you. Nancy Boyda.
Matt and I actually agree on many things. Let's talk about the roots of this inflation that's going on. First of all, the tariffs that President Trump came up with, those tariffs took the dollar tree to $1.25 tree. And if they keep on going, they will be so inflationary that we're going to get to the $1.50 tree. We know that all of these tax cuts, and I agree with you 100%, Matt, tax cuts went from 35 to 21 and Project 2025, and Derek Schmidt has been right there with them and said, we need to take it down to 18%. That's the lowest it has been in 80 years. We know that these tax cuts, massive tax cuts for wealthy, powerful corporations, and for wealthy people, they are highly inflationary. The next thing you know, the interest rates go up, the cost of housing goes up, and these are all things that we can and must do something about.
Thank you. On immigration is where we'll turn our attention next. What should the U.S. do about people who are in the country illegally or trying to enter the country illegally? Under what circumstances should people be allowed in? Nancy, you answer first, please.
Well, I have said often that I am a strong, independent, moderate woman who will break with her party when needed. 16 years ago, I broke with my party so visibly on immigration and begged both sides of the aisle and said, if we don't fix this immigration problem right now, there will be a humanitarian crisis at the border. I was a lone voice in my party begging for us to do something then. And so we need to come with a bipartisan law that starts with border security. That's where it has to start. We have to do something about E-Verify to help protect working wages. And Derek Schmidt, once again, let's bring him into this. Derek Schmidt has said he's voted over and over again against E-Verify, and that has just hurt working people so badly. We need to have a path to citizenship. Once we get the border secure, then we can talk about visas, we can talk about that path to citizenship.
Nancy, thank you. Matt.
Well, I'm glad Nancy referenced her record because she has repeatedly said in this campaign and previously that she's the most conservative Democrat on immigration. I think we do need to have a secure border, and that's something that all Democrats agree on with Republicans. The Senate Republicans had a bipartisan immigration deal, and it wasn't until extreme politicians killed that deal this year that we saw immigration break again. That's because politicians want to have a broken immigration system so they can win elections. I don't think that's right. We need a smart border security system, not a dumb wall that people can get over with a ladder or underneath with a tunnel. What that's going to take is more investment in surveillance, border personnel, not abolishing the Department of Homeland Security as candidates on this stage of the GOP said they would do last week. And it also means we need regional collaboration. Immigration surges down 40% because the Biden-Harris administration has worked with partners in Central and South America to make sure that there's an alternative pathway. We should not be deporting undocumented folks in this country. If you want to keep cost of goods living, we shouldn't be deporting half of our country's entry-level farm workers. It's unconscionable. We need to be protecting the rights of our community, not taking them apart.
And time. Thank you both very much. Our next question, Ms. Boyda, you held this seat previously, as you have mentioned. Mr. Kleinmann, this is your first campaign. So the question is having political experience a good thing or a bad thing? Matt, you're up first.
Well, it depends on what kind of political experience you're talking about. Leadership is an action, not a position. And I've been a leader in my community for the last 10 years, working every single day, working with working families to make sure that they have access to the things they need. This is an election that's about who do you trust to get things done? Who do you trust to show up and be present as an accessible resource? And who is going to be a champion for you in Congress? Now, I know there are a lot of folks who are running for this office, many of whom are career politicians and bureaucrats. I am not a career politician. I repeat that. I am not a career politician. I'm just somebody who cares a lot about my community, and I'm tired of seeing us get left behind. I am running this race so that we can build a movement that restores faith in our democracy and make sure that we fight back against extremism. I believe in America, and as somebody who has not held political office before, this is exactly the type of race that we should be running, so that we have a champion in Congress that works for working families and makes sure that everybody is getting access to the resources they need so that they can thrive.
Matt, thank you. Nancy.
Well, experience absolutely does matter. I spent over 20 years in pharmaceutical research and development in the business world, and then I was a member of Congress, and I got to represent this district, and I did stand up, and I did break with my party when it was important. I was also the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and worked with Guard and Reserve with bringing back and reintegrating families together after they had been deployed. I am been a pastor and a chaplain together. I have a little small farm now, and today I get the absolute joy of being boots on the ground, face to face with people who are homeless, doing everything we can to find resources and a way to make their life better. I spend every day on the ground with families we're doing everything we can to keep them out of homelessness. So out of everyone in this, first of all, I'm the only one who's been in Congress, but I have the widest breadth of experience across so many areas.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, we are in the midst here at WIBW of a year-long mental health awareness effort that we call Hear Me, See Me. And one challenge that we have been hearing as we've covered those issues is about access. People who are not in immediate crisis have long waits for appointments. Providers can't add staff because they can't find new recruits. People can't afford care, or they get insurance coverage for a few sessions when they really need something longer term. So the question I have is, how can we ensure that everyone who needs mental health care can access it? This goes first to Nancy Boyda.
Well, let's go back in history for a minute. If you go back to 1980 and Ronald Reagan, everything that we had together to take care of mental health was disbanded and torn apart. A lot like they're talking about, Matt, about getting rid of the Department of Education. And the results were absolutely disastrous, and we're seeing the results of that today. They said, sure, we'll just put it out into the communities. So what we need today is we absolutely need access. We need more intervention, the crisis intervention centers, so that our first responders and police they're not on the front line having to provide mental health. That should be professionals. We need absolutely to make sure that the VA is staffed and funded for our veterans who need mental health care. We need mental health care across our schools, across our communities, access to mental health care, but we also have to have more trained mental health professionals to address all of the problems that we're having.
Nancy, thank you. Matt.
So when we talk about mental health, I want to first recognize that I know there's a lot of you at home who are struggling with it, and it is a crisis. And I just want to encourage you to get help. If you need help, call the 988 hotline. There are people who do care about you, and I want to start by just acknowledging that this is a serious issue in our country. It's an epidemic. I had my uncle call me, and he said, look, the biggest issue facing farmers today is suicide prevention. I talked to a sheriff running in Atchison as a Republican, and he said, Matt, I want you to win so that you and I can work together and get first responders the care they need. I am grateful to Representative Sharice Davids, who has worked to get a co-responder bill through, which brought $750,000 to Wyandotte County in our first responders, so we have co-responders. This is an issue that we need to take care of, and Kansas is near last in every measure on mental health. So I want to just reiterate, this is the #1 platform issue in my campaign. We're talking about building up our communities. We're talking about making sure we have access to health care, and we're talking about taking care of working families. I believe this is a critical issue.
Thank you both. That brings us to the closing statements. 1 minute for each of you, and we begin reverse alphabetical order. Matt.
Well, thank you for having us today, Melissa, and I just want to thank Nancy. I think it's really important that we have an honest conversation in our democracy, and I want to thank you, the viewer. This is a critical moment in our country's history, and I know hearing us, you might think we're all over the place, or you might think we disagree. Whatever the case is, I know as Democrats that when we stand together as a unified party, we can win this race. I mean this. We can win this race. This is a race about our future, and I believe I am the best champion to carry that torch forward. This is a race where we have been getting support from across the district, whether that's Anthony Hensley, Lynn Dixon Grant, Dr. Barbara Boyer, or the Mainstream Coalition, who endorsed our campaign because we are the best opportunity in this race for bipartisan good governance. I believe that I am the champion that will work every day on your behalf, just as I've done for the last 10 years. And I look forward to your vote on August 6th. Please look up Kleinmann for Congress to learn more, and I certainly look forward to being your congressman after November. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. And Nancy.
And thank you, Matt. It has been absolutely delightful to have a primary. And why vote for me? Because as I have said many times, and Matt's heard me say this, I think everybody likes Matt. I like Matt. But the fact is, every Democrat who has tried this in the last 30 years has fallen short by the same 15 points. I lost my first race by 15 points. Literally, every Democrat loses by 15 points. And while I like Matt, I see his passion. I think he's amazingly well-spoken. The fact is, Sharice Davids and I are the only two who have come out of the Republican buzzsaw and lived to tell about it. Why am I running? I like Matt, but he doesn't have a chance to come out of the election as a winner. I hope he runs some other time, but I'm asking for your vote. If you actually want to win this time, I'm asking for your vote. I'm Nancy Boyda.
Nancy, thank you, and thank you both for your time today. We have some key dates we want you to see. Of course, the deadline to register is passed, but check all of your information at myvoteinfo.voteks.org. Primary election day is August 6th, and remember that you did hear from all 5 Republicans who are in this race last week, Tuesday here. We also have those interviews and the forum on WIBW.com. Thank you all for being here.